ho, ho, ho. What is up, my dazzle? First episode of a gameplay tutorial for a tabletop board game is going to be 51st State, which was also our first unboxing. Whoop, over here. Look at that. 51st State Ultimate Edition. So this, all of our current expansions for the game are in the box. We got special tokens, all that kind of stuff, and I'll show you guys all that stuff a little bit more closely than what we did during the unboxing. But we're going to kind of get into this and see how it goes, and hopefully you guys like it enough to pick it up. So we're only going to cover the base game. So you have 4 factions that you can play as in the base game. You have the Appalachian Federation, you have the Merchants Guild, you have the Mutants, and you have New York. Each faction comes with their own kind of special abilities, we'll say, but it's just kind of like during the production phase and stuff like that. So in 51st State, you're in a post-apocalyptic world, and you're trying to be the lead faction of the post-apocalyptic world. You play up until about 25 victory points. First person to get there will trigger end game stuff. So we're going to go through the bits and bobs, the pieces, the factions, the cards, and gameplay. Let's get into it. So as you can see here, we've got our 4 factions: the Appalachian Federation, the Merchants Guild, the Mutants Union, and New York. Each one of them comes with their own little marker that will be used for the scoreboard. And we have our first player tokens. This is the one that comes with the game as a base standard, and this is the 51st State token that was with the Ultimate Edition. Also in the box you have your blue tokens, your red tokens, your gray token, your universal token, your riot shield, and then these are all your materials you need to play the game: your bricks, your people, your guns, your fuel, and your iron. Also, you have the play deck, and you have your connection cards. So these here are your connection cards. These supplies here are meant to be unlimited. So if you run out, there is a multiplier token, a 5 times multiplier token. And these tokens are contact tokens. I didn't say that the last time, I just said red, blue, gray, and universal. So these are contact tokens, shield tokens. We have our ammo tokens, which count as a universal supply, and we have development tokens. And we'll get into all these parts here in a second. So 51st State is played over a series of rounds, and each round has 4 phases. So at the beginning of the game, we're going to set up for a 2-player game, so we're going to get rid of a couple of these. We're going to keep the Mutants Union and New York, and we'll get rid of them. Set them over here. So I have the game mats, which you should be able to find. I got these, the Game Found Ultimate Edition. So we're going to put the Mutants Union there, and we'll put New York here. And we're going to take their counters, and we're going to set them next to our scoreboard. Actually, there's a spot for 0, so we'll just put it right on 0. So at the beginning of the game, we shuffle our deck, which has only cards that say 51st State on them. Each expansion will have the name of the expansion on the card, and we will do subsequent videos adding in one expansion at a time and going over the different rules and nuances that happens. So we shuffle our deck up really good, and we deal 6 cards to each player. Each player then looks at their hand, and chooses 2 cards that they wish to get rid of. And for the sake of expediency, we're just going to go ahead and take 2 cards off. Discard pile face up. Now, one thing to note is that if the deck would ever run out, you take the discard pile, shuffle it up, and start over. The connection cards do have a limit, so once they are gone, they are gone. So we have our 2 decks. So the next step is at the beginning of each turn, we will choose a first player to start. However, random flip coin, roll dice, etc., etc. Oldest, youngest. And then you would deal out the number of cards per player plus 1. So in a 2-player game, we have 3 cards. And the player that is first picks his card that he wants first. Then the next player, and whatever is not picked goes to the discard pile. Now you do this step again. And now the person that drew last draws first. Okay? That is called your lookout phase. Okay? So after the lookout phase is your production phase. Your production phase is based on each card. As you can see, the mutants produce 3 people, 1 gun, 1 gray contact token. 3 people, 1 gun, and then they also draw a card from the deck. The New Yorkers, they get 3 people, 1 iron, 1 gray connection token, contact token, sorry, and draw 1 card. So that is the production phase. Now, as you build your engine across in these spots, we will have more production that can happen, things that happen every turn to help your production amp up so that you can do more things on your turn. Obviously, like most engine builders, right? So, once you're done, everybody's done the production phase, this can happen simultaneously, but I like to do it one at a time personally so every player doesn't feel rushed or something doesn't get missed, or if there's a question it can be asked like, oh, does this card mean I can produce this now? I just like personally, and it makes the game kind of more engaging, right? So after the production phase is the action phase. The action phase goes around and around clockwise from the first player of that round all the way through until all players pass. So there are multiple actions you can take during the action phase. The first action you can take during the action phase is build a location. So building a location happens with, as you can see from this card, you play its distance cost with contact tokens. So if a card has a distance of 1, you would play 1 contact token, and you would place that on your production area, if it is a production card. So as you can see, the cards say open production. And then you automatically get the token that is, or the resource that is labeled there as the open production. Some cards will have a bonus production that you can get extra resources with as you play the card. The next type of action is you can make a deal. To make a deal, you play a card with a location from your hand by discarding the number of blue contact tokens equal to its distance value. And what that does is that allows you to, on my game mat, it goes here. But if you don't have the game mat, it goes upside down underneath the board to where you can see the deal icon. Okay, so for this instance, the clay pits gives us 1 brick. And you immediately take the resource that is depicted on the card. And you will also get this during every production phase. So this person would get a brick. The next action you can take is raise a location. In raising a location, you can do this a couple of ways. From your hand, you discard the card and the number of red contact tokens equal to the distance on the card. So if it has a distance of 1, you can pay 1 red token and you get the spoils, which is in the top right-hand corner of the card. You instantly get those spoils, and then you discard the card. Now, you can raise an opponent's card. So say our opponent had played the feature card here for the refinery that has a distance of 2. You discard the number of red tokens equal to the defense value of that area. The defense value is the red shield at each location. So 3, 4, and 5. That is the defense cost. So you could raise it. They would turn it over. It's now a ruin. Ruins don't count for any value. Now, one thing to note is that if your opponent has already passed, you cannot raise their locations. Passing keeps your location safe from your enemies. Okay? And then also, if there are any tokens on the vehicle, some vehicle on the location, some cards can hold materials over from a previous round. And if that location was raised, those materials get put back into your general supply. Now also, note, if a person were to have one of these police riot shields on their location, you would have to then pay the defense cost plus 1. So this would now be a 5 cost location to raise. Another action you can do is use an action from your board. So at the bottom of each card, at the actions section, there's multiple actions. For example, the New York card says you can spend 1 iron to gain 1 gray contact token. Spend 1 gun to gain 2 red contact tokens, and spend 2 fuel to gain 2 blue contact tokens. And these are limited. So what we like to do in our house is put that material there if we were to spend it, so that we know that we have done that action that round. You can do all 3 of the actions. You just can't do any of them more than once. One action you can take as many times as you want is to spend 2 of your people resource to gain 1 of any resource, or draw 1 card from the deck. This could be done any number of times, and if you had 6 people, you could put all 6 there, draw 3 cards, or gain 3 of any resource. Okay? Another action you can do is to use another player's open production. So what happens there is our mutant union needs some iron, so they put 1 person on from their supply onto that card. It can now not be used as an open production again for another player. But they gain the iron resource that would be from this card. And then the player that got their open production used would then gain 1 person resource. You want to kind of leave the tokens on the cards just to kind of denote that they have been used. The other option you can do is to take or play a connection card. You can spend 2 of your people resource to take either of these face-up cards and add it to your hand. When played, you take that action immediately from your hand, place it on the discard pile for the connection card. So if this was in our hand, we would play it and instantly gain 3 blue connection coins. You don't flip over the top one until the next turn. These are limited per round. So they cost 2 people. They go to your hand. You can't play it the same turn, same action phase, but your next action phase you could then play that card. That takes up your action, and it keeps going around and around. So at any point during your turn, though, you can place 1 shield on one of your locations, obviously if you have a shield. And then the last thing you can do is part of the build location, and I missed that. So there are a couple of ways to build locations. The first one was play the contact token amount per distance. So the gray contact token for the distance. The other option is to develop. You choose a card from your hand and 1 location you already have in your state that share a type. You spend 1 brick resource to then remove the location from your state, place it in the discard pile, and then put the card from your hand in front of you. And what they mean by same type is, as you can see, these have, you only have to match 1, but they have both ammo and iron, so they would be able to be developed. So we would develop this one would go to our discard pile, and this one would stay here. If at any time a card you play, whether it be for spoils, like this card, that have a purple star on them, that's how many victory points you get immediately, and you move your marker accordingly. Some of them will have the building bonus, as you see on this card. You get 1 star for each building that has the brick symbol in your state. So those are the different types of actions you can take during your turn, during the round. And then once you pass, you can't do anything. Your opponents can still take action phases, but they cannot affect any states or any locations in your state. Your state is now safe. Once you go to the point where everyone has passed, you go into the cleanup phase. The cleanup phase is any extra resources. So if your locations have any storage abilities, you use them to save the goods described on your card. So for instance, this card, the Underground Warehouse, shows that you can store up to 3 guns, fuel, iron, or bricks during the cleanup phase, and then you take them back during your production phase. But any resources you have left over at the end of your turn, they go bye-bye. And then you also discard any face-up connection cards and flip the next one over. So that, in a nutshell, is how you play 51st State, kind of during the rounds and all that kind of stuff. A couple things I wanted to mention is these ammo tokens. These are used as any resource. These are universal tokens, so they can be used at any time to count as a gray, red, or blue contact token. And then you can use this token in lieu of paying the brick for a development. So when you have that match, when you have 2 cards that match and you want to develop one, get rid of it, and play another one, you don't have to play the brick, you can play the yellow dozer token. Then to start the next round, you pass the first player token to the left to the next player, you do the lookout phase again, then you go through all of the actions again. One thing to note is during the cleanup phase, some characters and some cards will have special features and bonuses and etc. So make sure you're reading your card. I don't have time, obviously, to go through every card. But that is the phases in a nutshell. The one thing to note is the first player in a round, any round, whatever round it is, to reach 25 starts the end game round. So as soon as a person hits here, end game has been triggered. You skip the cleanup phase of that round, and you total up your points. So, like I said, when a player reaches that 25 victory points, you finish the current action phase, skip cleanup. One caveat to that is if during a production phase, someone produced the victory points to go to 25, you still play the action phase. But then after that, you skip the cleanup phase. You score 1 action point for every location that you would have in your state. Ruins do not count for any points, so if the card was raised or ruined for any reason. And the player with the highest score after that wins. In the case of a tie, most player with the total amount of goods wins. If there's still a tie, then it's a victory. One thing I want to touch on is when developing, if you have a ruin in your state, that ruin counts as any type to then use as a development. So if I wanted to play and develop this card from my hand, I would pay my 1 brick and I could discard the ruin. And another thing to note is if a rule on a card or on a faction board supersedes a rule, the faction card or the card takes precedence over a rule in the rule book. So if the rule book says you cannot do something, but a card tells you you can do something, you do as the card says, or what the character board says. There are solo variants, and there are many expansions. So this was kind of just a rudimentary run-through of the game. And the next time I film for 51st State, I'll go through adding one of the expansions into the game, discuss it, link this video to it to discuss all of that. If you guys liked the video, give us a like, give us a follow, show some love, hit that subscribe button. I'm going to do more of these tutorials, and if I made a mistake, let me know in the comments. I will edit my video accordingly. If I miss something, let me know. I am human. This is my first tutorial. So I may have missed something. And as I keep doing these, we'll obviously get better. So once again, if you like what you see, give us a like, give us a follow, show some love. We at Hailed Zebra Gaming love you guys. And we'll talk to you next week.